you on?
Yeah.
Some people do. I watch them every time they're filming. They're like,
Okay.
Aww.
This section talks about species. What we've been studying, when these numbers, P and Q, change, we call that microevolution. That means if I came back in a year or 5 years and P was 0.40 and Q was 0.60, that means some evolution has occurred. That means the organisms have changed a little, the population has changed a little bit. We call that microevolution. And what microevolution leads to is what we call macroevolution. Evolution on a large scale. If you can see a change in an organism, if you can see that it looks different, or it behaves differently, then we've had macroevolution occur.
So if it looks different?
If it looks different, if it behaves different, if it mates different, that's a form of macroevolution. Macro means large change in an organism. And organisms can become different over time. Look at these 3 species of leopard frogs. They're actually 3 different species. They're 3 different species because they won't mate with one another. If you mate with another frog of the opposite sex, you're in the same species. But if you won't mate with that other frog of the opposite sex, then you're different species. If in nature you put the 2 frogs together and they will never mate, they're different species. And the reason why these things are different species is, one of the reasons, they all look the same, so you just say, oh, those are all leopard frogs. But this one has a different, all 3 of them have different mating calls. And they've recorded the mating calls for you down here. This one goes, grab, 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 grab. That's its mating call. And this one goes, grab, 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 grab. And this one goes, grab, 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 grab. Do you like my leopard mating calls?
That was nice.
I've got frogs all over my house. This guy's unbelievable. All of those, see, they have different mating calls, and the females only respond to a certain mating call. So if this one is doing its mating call in the presence of these, well, they're not going to mate with one another because the calls are different. If they don't mate in nature, they're different species. That's the biological species concept that you'll read about in your reading. The biological species concept says that if they can't mate with one another, they're different species.
What's it called?
The biological species concept. Humans can't mate with apes. We can try, but we'll never get a baby out of it. Humans and apes are different species. Your dog can't mate with your cat. It can try, but you won't get a dog cat out of it, even though that's a good cartoon.
Cat dog.
Cat dog. They're different species. Okay? Question?
can't close species sometimes mate?
Sometimes two that are close, like a horse and a donkey, can mate, and they'll make a mule. But since the mule is sterile, they're considered different species too.
So 2 different species make another species?
2 different species, if they mate and make something that can't mate, then they're also considered different species. But if the 2 can mate and make babies, and the babies are also fertile, then they're considered to be the same species. That's the biological species concept.
So what's mule considered?
Just a mule.
It's not like a species or anything?
Is it a hybrid?
It's a hybrid.
Can a mule mate with
But
like
it
a
can't,
horse?
no, mules are sterile.
So like they can't.
They can't mate. The only way you can get a mule is to mate a horse and a
Oh,
donkey.
I never knew that.
Ligers are sterile
I mean, do they
too.
consider them like their own species?
That's pretty
or-
sad.
It's called a hybrid technically.
Yeah,
Is that all there are?
I've seen like binomial names. It'll be the horse binomial name. It'll be the other binomial name and an X next to it.
Oh, really? Okay.
So I think
Why are they
that's
sterile
very
then?
hybrid.
What's that?
Why are they sterile?
It's for their chromosomes. They have the wrong chromosome number to make babies with one another. I think that's what it is. I think it has to do with their chromosomes. There's other types of species concepts other than the biological species concept.
But how?
Question?
How is the biological species concept work with the mules and the horses and the donkeys? That doesn't make sense.
The horses are separate species from the donkeys.
Mhm. So they shouldn't mate.
Since they can't make babies that are fertile. Fertile means. they
Okay,
can't have
I get
babies.
it now. Okay.
So we consider the horse and the donkey separate species, even though they look pretty close. Horses and donkeys look sort of similar, but that's the way they used to go, just by how things looked. And how things looked, there's subjective analysis there. We call that, the book calls that the morphological species concept, if you just go by how they look. I mean, you look at this frog here, and you look at that frog there. Let's go back to the leopard frogs. I mean, would you put this one as a different species than that one? Just by looking at them?
No.
You might, but I might not. It could be different. Using the morphological species concept, morphology means how it looks. Those two look pretty darn similar. There's a little bit of difference, so you might put them as different species, but you might not. So the morphological species concept is subjective. It's not very scientific. Morphology is going by how it looks. So the biological species concept is a little more scientific. If you put that one and that one together, and they were able to mate and have fertile offspring, then they're the same species. But as it turns out, when we put that one and that one together, or that one and that one together, they don't mate with one another. And so they're considered to be different species now.
Well, how did a donkey and a horse mate if they're different species?
Because they make a sterile baby.
The
I
biological,
know, but why can't other
scientifically mating refers to having kids that are fertile.
So would we
But so could
In
you,
layman's terms, mating just means having sex.
Could you
And I've seen a
really
dog
mate?
and a cat sort of have sex before, and it's disgusting.
Oh my
And
god.
they're different species, right? So don't think of mating as just having
What?
sex. Mating means having a baby that's fertile.
but could you literally mate any animal and have a sterile mixture of children?
No.
Well, then how are
It just happens to work with the horse and the mule.
and the lion
And the lion and the tiger. It happens to work with them. They're close enough where they can get a kid, but the kid isn't fertile, so they're considered separate species. Humans and chimpanzees are not close enough where they can get a kid. I'm sure it's been tried before.
Oh my god. Let me stop talking.
It doesn't work.
It's disgusting.
I know the internet sites y'all go to.
Oh my
Don't act
god.
like, don't act like.
God.
Okay. Another thing it talks about in the book is the evolutionary concept of, or the phylogenetic concept of evolution. Sometimes we consider organisms similar species if they're evolutionarily related to one another. Like here we have an evolutionary tree. An evolutionary tree has branches to it, where through evolution, one species can become two. And surely those leopard frogs we talked about, there used to only be one species of leopard frog.
What is the evolutionary here?
This is called the phylogenetic species concept.
What is it?
Phylogenetic.
The family trees.
It's where you look at the evolutionary. You look at the family trees of these organisms. You know, there used to be one species of leopard frog, but as the frogs moved in different places around the country, probably some of them got some mutation where it changed their mating call. Their mating call got programmed differently. Imagine there's a bunch of leopard frogs, and they're all doing this mating call. Brop, 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 brop. And that's what's attractive to the female leopard frogs. And they listen for brop, 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 and that's who they mate with. What if you're one that's born to that population, and you don't like that mating call? Then you're not going to mate with anybody, right? What if you like a different mating call? What if you like brop, 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 brop? And you're listening for that and you never hear it. And then all of a sudden there's a frog born that goes bop, 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 bop. And you happen to like that. You're going to mate with that frog, right? And you're going to have a bunch of baby frogs. And they're all going to do the same call their parents did. And they're all going to like the same call their parents liked. Well, now you pretty much have a new species here forming. They'll mate with one another in their little frog family, and yeah, that's frog incest, and that's a whole other problem, but let's suppose that there's enough genetic diversity where that group survives. Then the one leopard frog has split. The original leopard frog is still there. We'll call it leopard 1. But now a new type of leopard frog has evolved that's completely separate from these and mates only with its own kind. We'll call that leopard 2. Do you see how our one species has changed into two species, has evolved? It's a tree.
But could they mate with each other?
They don't want to. Maybe they could. But eventually they can be, since they're just mating within their population, and these are just mating within their population, they could become so different that they maybe even physically couldn't mate. The differences can mount, you see, when your population is isolated. We call this isolation. This population is isolated from that one now. These don't mate with those in nature. Maybe they could, but if they don't, they're considered different species. We'll continue there. Do me a favor, read 17.1 tonight. I didn't get to talk about it all, but I'll continue tomorrow and we'll talk.